The stars were cold, the sky was empty, and the alien colony was dying. No green fields, no rivers, only gray dust and sharp winds. The land had once been rich, but now it was broken. The soil turned to stone. The people were weak, and their voices carried hunger instead of hope. In the center of this colony lived a mother named Leora. Her skin was pale silver, her eyes deep like twin moons. She had 2 young daughters, small and fragile. Their ribs sharp under their skin. Every night she held them close, whispering songs to hide their hunger, but their tiny hands still trembled, and their stomachs cried with emptiness. Food was more valuable than gold. The colony's stores had run dry. Trade ships passed them by, refusing to land, because no one wanted to deal with the starving. Even the strong had grown thin, and the weak were already gone. The colony counted its dead every sunrise, and every sunrise the number grew. Leora worked, she begged, she searched the rocks for roots. But roots do not grow in dead ground. She sold her last blanket, her last pot, her last tools, but nothing could buy enough food for 2 children. Every night she stared at the sky, asking the stars why they had abandoned her. Rumors spread among the starving, whispers of a secret market, a place where the desperate could trade not gold, not silver, but pieces of themselves. Hearts, eyes, lungs, blood, anything that still carried life. Merchants came from far planets to buy such things. It was said that some used them for science, some for power, and some for reasons no one dared ask. Leora listened, afraid, but as her daughters grew weaker, her fear turned into fire. If she must give away part of herself, she would. If it meant her daughters would live, she would cut the stars from her chest. She told herself, "They are my future, they must eat, even if I do not." One evening, as the colony gathered in silence, a stranger appeared, not alien, not familiar, but human, tall, wrapped in a dark coat, his face hidden under the hood of his helmet. He walked with slow steps, and the air seemed to bend around him. The crowd parted in fear, whispering, "Human, human." Dangerous, for stories of humans were sharp, filled with wars, fire, and conquest. But the human did not raise a weapon. He only looked at the colony with eyes full of shadows. He came to the center, where the merchants gathered their cruel market, and he waited as if searching for someone. His voice, when he spoke, was heavy, carrying across the dusty square. "I am here to buy." Leora felt her chest grow heavy. She looked at her daughters, one asleep from weakness, one awake but silent. She knew the choice had come. She stepped forward, her feet shaking, her voice breaking. "I will sell," she whispered. The merchants leaned closer, smiling with greed. The human turned his head, his gaze falling on her, and in that moment, it seemed he already knew what she was going to offer. Her people gasped when she said it. "I will sell my heart," not both, only one, for her kind carried 2 within their chest. With one she could live, weaker, slower, but alive. With none, she would die, leaving her daughters alone. The merchants shouted numbers, prices, coins clashing on the table, but the human lifted his hand, silencing them all. He stepped closer, and his voice was quiet but firm. "I will pay more than any of you." Gasps ran through the crowd. Why would a human pay so much? What dark purpose could he have for an alien's living heart? No one asked because no one dared. The trade was done in silence. The glow of her heart was lifted from her body, sealed inside a crystal case. Her breath grew shallow, her vision dimmed, but her daughters ate for the first time in weeks. Bread, fruit, and warm broth bought with the price of her heart. Tears filled their eyes as they held their mother's hands. She smiled through pain, whispering, "Live, my little stars. Live for me." The human took the crystal case and left the square without another word. His shadow vanished into the night, and the colony was left in silence, wondering, why had a human bought the heart of a dying mother? And what fate awaited the beating light he carried away? The colony still whispered about the trade, the night when the alien mother gave away her living heart, and the strange human who paid more than any merchant. Children repeated the story in hushed voices. Elders shook their heads, warning. Humans never give without reason. The human's name was Marcus. Though few in the colony knew it, he had walked into the market like a shadow, paid his price without question, and carried away the glowing heart sealed inside a crystal case. That case never left his side. It was strapped to his chest, where his own heart beat behind layers of bone and armor. Marcus was no ordinary buyer. He was a captain of a small ship, drifting between systems. Not rich, not poor, but always searching. He had fought in wars, seen the ashes of cities. He had known hunger, loss, and silence. His eyes carried weight, as if he had buried whole worlds in his memory. The colony people watched him with fear. Humans were dangerous. Humans burned planets. Humans conquered. That was the story told in every corner of the galaxy. And yet this one had come alone, not with soldiers. Not with weapons, only with coins and a strange silence that unsettled everyone. The merchants tried to question him. "What will you do with the heart?" They asked. "Why pay more than the value of a starship?" But Marcus only looked at them with eyes that gave no answers. "I will keep it safe," he said once, no more. The words sounded simple, but they carried a weight none could understand. Some believed he wanted power. Alien hearts were said to hold strange energy. Some thought he would sell it for profit in another system. Others whispered darker rumors, that humans drank the strength of other species, that they built weapons from living organs. The colony grew restless with fear, and yet no one dared challenge him. Because his presence was too heavy, like a storm waiting to break, Marcus left the market and returned to his ship, the case still glowing with the rhythm of a heartbeat. At night, when the ship drifted between stars, he would open the case. He never touched the heart, only looked at it. The glow lit his scarred face, his tired eyes, and sometimes, for reasons even he did not know, he whispered to it as if it could hear, "As long as you beat, they will live." For Marcus carried secrets. He had once been a father, long ago, before war took everything. He had held a child in his arms, small and fragile. He had watched hunger hollow her cheeks. He had listened to the cries that no food could silence. And one night she had gone still, leaving only silence in his arms. That silence had followed him across every battlefield, across every star. So when he saw Leora, thin, trembling, but standing tall for her daughters, he had seen his past reflected in her. The choice she made was the choice he could never forget. The price she paid was the same pain he once carried. And in that moment he knew. He could not let her heart fall into cruel hands. He had to buy it, not to own it, but to protect it. But the colony did not know this. They only saw a human walking with their mother's heart. Children stared at him with wide, fearful eyes. Elders turned their backs, muttering curses. Leora's daughters cried in the night, afraid the human would return and take more. Leora herself sat weak, her chest aching, but she whispered, "Do not hate him yet." Her words were soft, but her daughters did not understand. Marcus stayed near the colony for a time, not too close, not too far. Every day he watched from the shadows, making sure food still reached Leora's home, making sure her daughters grew stronger. He left supplies without name, without thanks, and returned to his ship before dawn. No one saw him, but they felt his presence, a shadow that did not leave. Yet even Marcus could not escape the weight of his choice. The heart pulsed in its crystal prison. Every beat reminded him of his daughter. Every glow reminded him of promises broken. He often asked himself, did I save them, or only delay the pain? But still he kept it, still he guarded it. For in his silent soul he believed one day it must return. The colony, however, only grew more divided. Some said the human was cursed, others said he was a thief. Some believed he would come back to claim the daughters too. Fear spread like fire among the hungry, and the human became both a ghost and a warning. Parents told children, do not go near him, or he will take your heart too. But the truth was different. Marcus did not want to take, he wanted to give. He wanted to return something that was never his. But the time was not yet right, and so he kept waiting, watching from the edge of the stars, carrying the weight of a heart that was not his, and the silence of a promise that was not yet spoken. The seasons turned slowly on the alien colony. Dust storms swept across the stone fields. The wind carried hunger in its breath. But inside one small home, two children laughed again. Their faces no longer hollow, their eyes brighter than before. Their mother, Leora, watched them with tired joy. Her daughters ate bread and soup, their strength returning. She smiled as she touched their cheeks. But behind that smile lived a heavy secret, because part of her was missing, her heart. One of the two that once beat inside her chest was gone, sold to a human who vanished into the stars. Her people did not speak of it. They looked at her with pity. Some called her brave, others called her cursed. But no one truly understood the weight she carried, for her body still lived, but weaker, slower. Every step was a reminder of what she had given away. Every night when the silence came, she felt the emptiness inside her ribs and wondered how long she could last. Her daughters did not know the truth. They were too young, too innocent. They only knew that their mother sometimes grew pale, that her hands trembled when she held them. She told them soft lies. Mother is only tired. Mother only needs rest. But the truth beat in silence inside her, the truth of a missing heart, and the shadow of the human who carried it away. Yet dreams came to her, strange dreams that blurred the line between sleep and waking. She saw the human Marcus walking through fire, the crystal case glowing against his chest. Her heart still beating within, and though he was far, she felt a thread pulling her to him, as if part of her soul traveled with the organ she had sold. Sometimes she woke gasping. Her daughters rushed to her side. Frightened, she hugged them close, hiding the truth behind soft whispers. But in her silence, she asked, "Why do I still feel my heart? Why does it still beat when it is gone?" The colony's whispers grew sharper. "Humans never return what they take," they said. "Your sacrifice fed your daughters, but it cursed you too." Some warned her that Marcus would return for more, that humans never gave without planning to take again. But Leora did not answer them. She only kept her secret close because in her dreams, Marcus did not look like a thief. He looked like a man carrying sorrow deeper than the void. Her older daughter, Saren, began to ask questions. "Mother, why do people whisper about the market? Why do they look at us with fear?" Leora wanted to lie again, but children grow fast when the world is cruel, so she told part of the truth. "That night, I gave away something precious so you could live, so you could smile." Saren did not understand fully, but she hugged her mother tightly and whispered, "Then I will live enough for both of us," her younger daughter. Nira was different. She had soft eyes, always searching. She asked, "Oh, the human, will he come back?" The question startled Leora, because no one spoke kindly of humans. But the child's voice carried no fear, only curiosity. "Why do you ask?" Leora whispered, and Nira replied, "Because I dream too. I see him carrying a light that belongs to us." Leora froze at the words, for the child's dreams echoed her own. Nights stretched into years. Her daughters grew stronger. Saren became bold, learning to gather what little food the land still offered. Nira grew quiet and thoughtful, often staring at the sky, and Leora hid her weakness every time she coughed. Every time her vision blurred, she forced herself to stand tall, because they needed a mother who did not bend, even if inside her missing heart ached louder than ever. But the bond between her and Marcus did not fade. Though she tried to bury it, she felt it in storms, in silence. A thread of energy that refused to break. Her people said she was cursed. Her daughter said she was tired. But Leora knew the truth. Part of her still lived in the hands of a human who had not returned but had not vanished from her soul. As the colony fought hunger and despair, a new fear began to spread. Ships appeared in the sky. Not human, but raiders. They circled like vultures, waiting to strike the weak. And every time they came, Leora prayed they would not land, because she knew her daughters were still too young, too fragile to face another loss. One night, under the red glow of the moons, she dreamed again of Marcus, but this time, the dream was sharper, stronger. He was standing on a battlefield, the crystal case in his hands, and he was whispering words she could almost hear. Words like a promise, words like an apology. She woke trembling, her chest aching as if the missing heart had called out to her. Her daughters held her hands, frightened, but Nira whispered softly, "Mother, he will come back." And Leora looked at her child with wide eyes because for the first time, she felt it too. A shadow moving closer, a secret pulling tighter, the beginning of something greater than hunger. Something that would change the fate of two worlds. Years passed, the colony struggled but survived. The children of hunger grew into young voices. The fields were still barren, the winds still cruel. But life clung stubbornly to the broken land. Leora's daughters had grown, Saren, the elder, strong and bold. Nira, the younger, quiet but sharp. They carried baskets, gathered roots, searched the rocks for water. They worked as others worked. But every evening they returned to their mother, their laughter keeping her alive more than food ever could. Yet Leora's body weakened. Her missing heart left her frail. Each day she moved slower. Her chest burned with the weight of sacrifice. But she never complained, for her daughters lived. And that was the only victory she needed. Still, in the deep hours of the night, dreams haunted her. Dreams of the human who had bought her heart. dreams of a glowing crystal case, dreams of words she almost heard but never understood. She tried to bury them, tried to forget the shadow of Marcus, but the thread between them never broke. Then one dawn the sky changed. The colony woke to the roar of engines. A ship descended through clouds of dust, its metal hull scarred by battles, its lights glowing like a silent storm. The people gathered in fear, their whispers sharp with terror. Raiders? Soldiers? Another curse? But it was not raiders, it was not soldiers, it was one ship. And when the hatch opened, a tall figure stepped out, a human wrapped in a dark coat. Older now, heavier with scars, but his presence was the same. The same storm that had walked into their market years ago. Marcus had returned, the colony froze. Mothers pulled their children close. Men reached for broken weapons, elders muttered. He has come back to take more. The crowd hissed with fear and anger. For no one had forgotten the night he bought Leora's heart. Marcus walked slowly, his steps heavy, his eyes tired, but his hands were steady as he carried something close to his chest. A crystal case glowing faintly inside, the rhythm of a beating heart pulsed like a star. Gasps filled the air. It was the same heart. The one he had taken, the one that belonged to Leora. He walked past the crowd, ignoring their shouts and curses. He walked until he stood before Leora's small home. Her daughters stood in the doorway, blocking his path. Siren's eyes were sharp with anger. "You cannot take more from us," she said. Her fists clenched, her voice shaking. But Marcus only knelt, and his voice, when it came, was low, almost breaking. "I did not come to take. I came to return." The crowd fell silent. Leora stepped forward, weak but unbending, her silver skin pale, her breath shallow, but her eyes were steady as they met his. "You," she whispered. Her voice carried pain, memory, and a question without words. Marcus bowed his head, his hands trembling as he lifted the crystal case. "This was never mine, it always belonged to you." The people gasped. Never had they seen a human return what was taken. Never had they seen a human kneel. Elders muttered in confusion. Children stared with wide, silent eyes, but no one spoke. The entire colony held its breath, as if the universe itself had frozen. Leora's hands shook as she reached for the case. The glow of her heart touched her face. She felt it not just in her fingers, but deep inside, a call, a bond, a part of herself that had never died. Her chest ached with longing. Her body remembered what it had lost, and her soul trembled at the thought of having it again. Saren grabbed her arm, frightened. "Mother, don't trust him. It could be a trap." But Nira's voice was soft, steady. "No, he is telling the truth. I can feel it." The crowd turned to the younger daughter, her calm words cutting through their fear, for she had always seen what others could not. Marcus lifted his eyes to Leora's, and in them she saw no greed, only sorrow. He whispered, "I carried it all these years, not for power, not for profit, but because I once failed my own child, and I swore never to watch another mother lose everything." The silence deepened. Some wept quietly, some looked away, unable to believe, but Leora only stared at him, her breath catching, her body trembling, because for years she had felt the pull. For years she had dreamed of this moment, and now it stood before her, real and alive. The crystal case glowed brighter, the heart beat faster, as if it knew it had found its way home. And the colony watched, every eye fixed on the human, every soul caught between fear and hope as Marcus held out the heart he had once taken, and offered it back to the mother who had given everything. The crowd held its breath. Dust swirled in the wind. The human still knelt on the ground, the glowing case in his hands, and before him stood Leora, weak but unbroken, her daughters at her side, one filled with doubt, one filled with quiet faith. No one moved, no one spoke, because they were waiting for the human to explain, waiting for the truth that weighed behind his tired eyes. At last Marcus lifted his head, his voice low, heavy, carrying the kind of pain that made even the angry pause. "I did not come here to steal. I did not come here to conquer. I came because once, long ago, I lost everything." The words carried through the square, soft but sharp, and the people leaned closer. Even their fear could not silence their curiosity. Marcus touched the crystal case gently. The glow reflected on his scarred face. "When I was young, before the wars, I had a daughter. She was small, full of laughter. Her hands reached for me every morning. Her eyes carried all the light in my world." His voice shook, but he forced the words to continue. "Then came hunger. Our world burned in a war we did not start. The food was gone, the rivers turned black, and I held my child in my arms, helpless as her body grew weaker every day. Leora's breath caught, because she knew the sound of that story. It was her story, the story of every mother in the colony, and yet it was told through the voice of a human. Marcus closed his eyes. She cried until she had no voice. She reached for me with shaking hands, and one night she fell silent, and I was left with nothing but her stillness, her empty body in my arms, her heart no longer beating. Gasps moved through the crowd, for even those who hated humans felt the sting of his words. Pain was universal, loss spoke in every language. Marcus pressed a hand against his chest. I swore that day I would never let it happen again, not if I could stop it, not if I had to carry the burden myself. He lifted the case higher, the alien heart glowing with steady light. When I saw Leora, when I saw her daughters starving, I remembered my child. I remembered the silence I carried all these years, and I knew, if I did not act, her story would end like mine. The people whispered, some with doubt, some with wonder. Could it be true? Could a human act not for greed, not for power, but for mercy? Marcus's voice grew stronger. I did not buy this heart to use it. I did not buy it to sell. I bought it because it was too precious to fall into cruel hands, too precious to be broken or destroyed. I carried it all these years, so that one day, when the time was right, I could return it, not as a thief, but as a guardian. Leora's eyes filled with tears. Her hands trembled as they hovered above the case, because she felt the truth in his words, not just in her ears, but in the bond that had tied her to him all these years. The dreams, the pull, the connection. It all made sense now. Saren's anger wavered. She looked at Marcus with doubt still burning, but also with a crack of hesitation. Why return it now? Why not years ago? Marcus turned his gaze to her, and his voice dropped heavy with honesty. Because you were still too fragile. Because your mother chose to weaken herself so you could grow strong. And I promised myself I would not return it until you had enough strength to stand. Until her sacrifice had meaning, until her gift had given you life. The younger daughter, Nira, stepped closer, her quiet eyes steady. You kept it safe all this time, she whispered. Marcus nodded once. Yes, because it was never mine. It always belonged here. The crowd stirred, some still whispered their doubts, but others felt something new, something dangerous, hope. Leora finally spoke, her voice soft, but filled with strength she did not know she still had. You carried my heart for years. You bore its weight when it was not yours. Why? Truly why? Marcus's eyes glistened with the answer. Because I could not save my own child. But I could save yours. The silence that followed was deep. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. The people stared at the human, not as a monster, not as a conqueror, but as a man broken and rebuilt by grief. Leora's hands finally touched the case. Her fingers traced the glowing surface. The pulse inside answered her, strong, steady, calling her name. Her daughters clung to her arms, one frightened, one hopeful, and the entire colony waited to see if she would accept it, to see if she would take back the heart that had once been hers. And Marcus knelt there still, his hands offering the gift, his eyes lowered, a human who had returned not with war, but with truth, a truth that could change everything. The square was silent, the human still knelt. Holding the glowing case, Leora's hands trembled above it. Her daughters pressed close, their hearts racing, and the whole colony watched, afraid to blink, afraid to breathe, because the next moment would decide everything. The heart pulsed inside the case, each beat a drum that echoed in Leora's chest. It called to her. It whispered of strength, of life, of time yet to come. But it also whispered of sacrifice already made. If she took it back, what would that sacrifice mean? If she refused, what would her daughters lose? Her body longed for it, her blood, her breath. Her bones all cried out for it. Years of weakness, years of pain, all could end if she accepted it. She could stand tall again. She could protect her daughters with both hands instead of only one. But in the corner of her mind, doubt sharpened its teeth. Saren, her eldest, spoke first, her voice strong, almost angry. Mother, do not trust him, he is human. They always take more than they give. Her fists clenched, her eyes hard, because she had grown with stories of conquest. She had seen her mother suffer, and she did not want to see her suffer again. But Nira, the younger, shook her head, her voice soft but certain. No, he speaks truth, I can feel it. The heart still belongs to her, and he has carried it not with greed, but with sorrow. Her calm words rippled through the crowd, because she had always been the one who saw what others could not. Leora stood between them. Her daughters divided, her people divided, her choice. Heavier than stone, she looked at Marcus, his eyes lowered, his hands steady. Not forcing, not demanding, only offering, and in his silence, she felt no chains, only a strange kind of freedom. The elders muttered from the crowd, "If she takes it, she betrays the sacrifice she made. Her gift kept her daughters alive. If she reclaims it, does that gift vanish?" Others whispered differently. "If she takes it, she can lead again, she can protect us. She can be strong." The colony's fear battled against its hope. Leora closed her eyes, her mind filled with memories. The night she sold her heart, the sight of her daughters eating again for the first time, their laughter in the years that followed, their tears when she weakened, the dreams of Marcus carrying her heart through fire, the whispers of her daughters, one begging her to refuse, one begging her to accept. Her body swayed. Her knees almost buckled. The missing rhythm inside her chest grew louder, calling her, demanding her, and for the first time in years, she allowed herself to imagine, what if she lived not only for her daughters, but with them? What if her sacrifice did not end her life, but gave her the strength to shape a new one? She opened her eyes, her gaze falling on Saren and Nira. "I gave it away so you could live, but now you live. Now you are strong. And if I remain weak, if I leave you too soon, who will guide you? Who will stand for you?" Saren's eyes filled with tears. Her anger cracking, she whispered, "You always stood for us, even when you had nothing left." And Nira, with quiet certainty, said, "Then stand again. Take back what was always yours." Marcus lifted the case higher, his voice breaking softly. "This is your choice. Not mine, not theirs, only yours, but know this. Your sacrifice already has meaning. It gave them life, it gave them years. Taking it back will not erase that truth." The heart glowed brighter. The crowd leaned forward, every breath caught in the same moment. As Leora placed her hands on the case, her fingers trembling, her chest burning, her soul whispering, "Yes." The seal opened, the air filled with light. The pulse of the heart thundered like a drum of war. And when it touched her again, her body shuddered, her breath came sharp. Her veins sang with fire. She cried out, not in pain but in power, as life returned to her fully. The colony gasped. Their weak, pale mother now stood tall, her silver skin glowing, her eyes fierce, her body whole again, and her daughters clung to her, weeping with joy for the first time in years. She was not fragile, she was not fading, she was alive. Marcus lowered his head. His burden finally lifted. He had carried the heart through storms, through years of silence, and now it beat where it belonged, not in a case, but in the chest of the one who had given everything. The people whispered in awe, some in fear, some in hope, because they had just witnessed something impossible. A human returning what was taken, a mother reclaiming her strength, a story that broke every belief they held. And Leora, with her daughters at her side, spoke not to Marcus, not to the crowd, but to the stars above. My choice was to give, and now my choice is to live. The air was still glowing. The sound of a heartbeat thundered through the square. Leora stood taller than she had in years, her silver skin alive with new strength. Her daughters pressed against her sides, and the colony stared in stunned silence. They had watched her weaken for so long, they had seen her sacrifice everything, and now they saw her reborn, whole again, fierce again, because a human had given back what no one thought possible. The people whispered among themselves, some afraid, some amazed. Humans do not return what they take. This one has. What does it mean? Their voices trembled, because the story of their world had changed in a single night. Leora turned to Marcus, her eyes bright, her body steady. You carried my heart through fire. You kept it safe when it was not yours, and now you have given it back. Her words shook with both gratitude and sorrow. Why? Marcus lifted his scarred face, his eyes heavy but calm. I told you. Because I could not save my child, but I could save yours. His voice broke softly. I carried your heart as if it were my daughter's. Because in saving it, I felt I was saving her too, and now I can let go. The crowd's fear cracked. Their anger thinned, because even in their distrust, they could not deny the weight of his truth. They saw no weapon in his hands, no greed in his voice, only a broken man who had chosen mercy. Saren, the eldest, stepped forward. Her fists no longer clenched. Her anger softened into tears. She whispered, You saved us even when we did not trust you. Marcus shook his head. No, your mother saved you. I only gave her the time to see you grow. Nira, the younger, lifted her gaze, her quiet voice cutting through the silence. Then both of you saved us, one gave away, the other returned, and together, you gave us life. Her words echoed in the ears of the people. Simple, clear, undeniable. The colony shifted. Something new stirred in their hearts. For centuries, humans were monsters in their stories. But now, before their eyes, one human had changed that tale. Not by force, but by choice. Leora stepped closer to Marcus. Her daughters at her side, she spoke so all could hear. You carried my heart, but more than that, you carried a bridge between our worlds. She raised her hand and for the first time, touched his shoulder, a gesture of trust, a gesture no one in the colony had ever given a human. The people gasped, but no one moved to stop her, because they felt it too. The moment was greater than fear, greater than anger. It was history rewriting itself. Marcus bowed his head, his voice low. Then let it be so, that my child's silence is not the end, but the beginning of a story where humans are not only destroyers, but also protectors. The moons rose higher, their light painting silver across the broken land. The colony gathered closer, children no longer hiding, elders no longer muttering curses. They looked at Marcus differently now, not as a thief, not as a shadow, but as a man who gave back what he could never replace in his own life. Leora's heart beat strong in her chest, her body filled with power, her spirit filled with resolve. She lifted her daughter's hands and spoke not just to Marcus, but to her people, to survive. We gave away to live, we must learn to receive. This human has shown us that sacrifice and mercy can walk together. And if we accept that truth, then we are no longer alone in the stars. The people listened, some still afraid, but others nodded slowly. Hope flickered in their eyes. Hope that the walls between them and the galaxy might not be forever. Saren stepped closer to Marcus, her young voice trembling. Then you are family now. And Nira, with her quiet strength, whispered, Uncle. Marcus froze, his eyes wide, for he had carried grief across years, and in that moment, he felt something he had not felt since his daughter's last breath. Belonging, the colony began to cheer softly, not in wild celebration, but in cautious hope. A sound that grew louder with each voice until the air itself seemed to hum with new beginnings. The stars above watched in silence, two worlds once divided, now bound by a mother's sacrifice, a human's mercy, and the laughter of children who would grow without hunger. And in that moment it became clear. This was no longer just Leora's story, no longer just Marcus's story. It was the story of both their people, the story of how one heart, given away and then returned, had rewritten the future. The final words came not from Leora, not from Marcus, but from the whisper of the wind across the colony, soft, steady, carrying through the stars. In the cold silence of space, one mother's heart and one human's mercy gave birth to the gift of two worlds.